The vampire king married a human bride as a cruel joke to prove his power, but on their wedding night, she revealed a secret that could destroy his throne. As his arrogance shattered, the king who feared nothing found himself on his knees, begging the one person he never meant to love. The first time Mara heard the words human bride, she was kneeling on the laundry room stone, trying to rub warmth back into her fingers. The palace water was always cold, even when the kitchen steamed and the glass house glittered with moonlit dew. It ran through the pipes like a quiet warning: this place was not built for people who needed sunlight and soup and sleep. Mara had learned to work with the cold, not against it.
Rise with me.
She folded sheets until her knuckles ached, counted towels like prayers, and kept her eyes lowered when a vampire noble passed the corridor, less from fear than from habit. In Evershade Palace, a human was safest when she was ordinary. That morning, she had torn a corner of her apron to wrap a small cut on her thumb. It wasn't much, but she'd been raised to waste nothing. As she pressed the cloth around the wound, the laundry door opened and the steward's assistant stepped in, boots too clean for the wet floor. "Mara of the River Quarter?" he asked, as if there might be another. She stood, smoothing her damp skirt. "Yes, sir." He did not look at the cut or the raw skin on her hands. He held out a sealed envelope instead, black paper, silver wax. Her name was written in careful ink, more elegant than anything that had ever been addressed to her. "For you," he said. Then, quieter, as though the walls themselves listened, "you are to prepare. You will be brought to the upper levels by dusk." The assistant left before she could ask questions. The other washerwomen stared at the envelope as if it were a moth pinned to a board, beautiful and wrong. Mara's heart thudded with the small, humiliating thought that perhaps she was being dismissed. Perhaps her mother's old debt had finally caught her.
This is real.
Perhaps the palace had decided it no longer needed the extra human hands. She broke the seal with a trembling thumb. The letter inside did not threaten her. It did not list punishments. It was, somehow, worse in its calmness. "By order of His Majesty, King of Evershade, you are summoned to the Hall of Vows.
As equals, my queen.
You will be wed at the turning of the moon. Wednesday." She read it twice, then a third time, as if the word might change. Around her, the laundry room continued, water sloshed, linen thumped, somebody's quiet cough. The palace did not pause for a human's confusion. But Mara felt as though something had opened beneath her feet, not a pit, not a trapdoor, just a widening space where the ground of her life used to be. A bride, and human. Everyone in the lower levels had heard the rumors about the Vampire King. Not the sharp stories children dared each other to whisper, but the quieter truths. He had not taken a bride in a century. He kept court like winter kept the land, orderly, distant, inevitable. Humans lived in Evershade because the palace needed them, gardeners to tend night-blooming roses, cooks to season food the vampires never ate, scribes to copy records by daylight hours when vampiric eyes tired. Humans were useful. Humans were tolerated. Humans were not, as a rule, married. By midday, the rumor had already found its shape. Mara heard it in the stairwell as she was guided upward by two silent attendants with grey gloves. "It's a joke," someone muttered behind a pillar. "A show for the court." "Humiliating," another voice answered. "A human in the Hall of Vows." Mara kept walking because stopping would mean collapsing. Her mouth tasted of iron, not from fear exactly, but from the effort of holding herself together. She thought of her little brother, Jory, back in the River Quarter with his thin lungs. She had promised, the last time she visited, to bring a coin for the healer and a ribbon for his kite. If she was leaving the laundry, who would send the coins? If she was being made a spectacle, what would become of her dignity, the one thing she owned without permission? At the top of the servants' stair, the air changed. It was still cold, but cleaner, scented with cedar and something faintly floral. The corridor floors shone so brightly she could see her own reflection, hairpin too simply, face pale from long hours indoors, eyes wide with questions. A seamstress named Litha met her in an antechamber full of fabric and quiet lamps. "I'm sorry," Litha said, not looking sorry so much as careful. "We've been told to fit you for white." "White?" Mara repeated. Her voice sounded small in the tall room. Litha's fingers paused on the measuring tape. "It's traditional for humans," she said gently, as if explaining something to a child. Then, softer, "I don't know what they want from you. But you can decide what you want from yourself." The sentence landed in Mara's chest like a stone that was also a gift. All afternoon, she was washed, brushed, pinned, instructed. The maids who tended her were not cruel. They were quiet, even kind in the way of palace workers who understood each other's positions. One offered her warm milk in a small cup, as if warmth itself could be smuggled into her. Between fittings, Mara sat near a tall window that looked out over the inner garden. Pale moths drifted among the black roses. A fountain ran without sound, its water catching moonlight like thread. She watched a solitary figure cross the far terrace, tall, cloaked, moving with a stillness that made the night seem louder. Someone murmured, "His Majesty," and everyone lowered their eyes. Mara did too. Not because she was commanded. Because she did not know what to do with a king. The wedding was not like the market ceremonies Mara had seen in the river quarter, where neighbors brought bread and laughter and somebody's uncle played a wrong note on a flute. This was a formal tide of words spoken in an old language that Mara only half understood. The Hall of Vows was a vast chamber of dark stone and pale banners, lit by lamps that burned with a steady blue flame. She walked alone down the long aisle. On either side, vampire nobles watched with expressions that were not openly hostile, but not warm either, curiosity dressed as politeness. At the far end stood the king. His face was handsome in the distant way portraits were handsome. He did not smile. He did not look at her as a man looks at a woman. He looked at her as a ruler looks at a decision already made. Mara's first urge was to shrink. Her second, quieter, steadier, was to keep her shoulders square. She repeated the vows when prompted. Her voice did not shake on the important words. She did not weep, though tears prickled behind her eyes like trapped rain. She kept her chin level, imagining Litha's sentence like a thread tied around her wrist. You can decide what you want from yourself. When the ceremony ended, there was no cheer, no kiss, no embrace. A bell chimed. The court bowed. Mara stood beside the king as if she belonged there, because if she did not claim her own feet on the ground, someone else would decide where she should stand. Afterward, she was not led to a feast. She was taken to a sitting room and told to wait. The room had a hearth that burned without crackle. Books lined one wall, their spines stamped in gold. A tray of food had been placed on a side table, bread, cheese, berries, things a human might actually eat. The small practicality of it almost undid her. She had been made a symbol, and yet someone had remembered she would be hungry. A knock came. Not loud. Not demanding. An older vampire woman entered, dressed in plain dark cloth that marked her as someone powerful enough not to need display. Her hair was silver, her eyes a calm amber. She closed the door behind her and regarded Mara as if she were reading a page. "You are Mara," the woman said. "Yes, my lady." "Lady," the woman echoed with a faint curve of the mouth. "I am called Seneschal Isolde. I oversee the palace households. You will answer to me in matters of schedule and conduct." Mara swallowed. "Am I still a servant?" Isolde considered her. "You will be treated with the courtesy of your new title," she said. "But the palace does not change its bones overnight." Mara understood that. It was one of the few things she had always understood. Isolde moved to the side table and picked up a folded parchment. "There is a matter," she said. "A customary offering is expected from the household on the night of a royal union. The court wishes to mark this marriage with a gesture." Mara felt her stomach tighten. "What gesture?" Isolde's gaze did not flicker. "An increase in the blood donation schedule for human staff," she said, as if discussing extra coal for winter. "Voluntary, of course. Yet many will feel compelled to agree. You, as human bride, could endorse it. A statement from you would quiet any unrest." Mara stared at the parchment. She knew about the donations. The palace did not allow feeding on staff. It was one of the reasons humans could work here without fleeing in the night. But the donation room still existed, clean, regulated, watched over by physicians. Most gave because the pay was better if they did. Some gave because refusal was followed by fewer shifts, fewer favors, fewer chances. Mara thought of the laundry girls whose arms were already bruised from carrying wet linen. She thought of the kitchen boy who had fainted last week and been scolded for it. She thought of herself, wrapping a cut thumb because she could not afford to waste cloth. A strange calm came over her, not the calm of surrender, but of clarity. "If I sign," she said slowly, "they'll do it because they're afraid to be seen as disloyal." Isolde did not deny it. "Fear keeps order." "And what keeps us human?" Mara asked, surprising herself with the steadiness of her tone. Isolde's eyes narrowed a fraction. "Not anger, interest." Mara took a breath and tasted cedar on the air. "I won't sign," she said. "Not like that." Isolde's voice was very soft. "You are newlywed. You have no allies in this court. Do you understand what you refuse?" Mara did. She felt it all at once, the possible punishment, the cold dismissal, the quiet ways a palace could make a person disappear without ever spilling blood. But she also felt something else, a thin, stubborn line inside her that had been there since childhood, since she had watched her mother bow to a landlord and then stand up straight again the moment she turned away. "I understand," Mara said. "I'm not refusing to help. I'm refusing to use other people's bodies to buy my safety." Isolde looked at her for a long moment. Then she placed the parchment back on the tray, untouched. "I will inform the court you require time to consider," Isolde said. "No," Mara replied, gently but firmly. "Tell them I will not endorse it. If they wish to ask the workers, let them ask openly, with fair compensation, and with rest days afterward. Let it be a choice that means something." Isolde's expression shifted, so subtle Mara almost missed it, like the smallest crack in ice. "You speak as though your words matter," Isolde said. Mara's hands trembled, but she clasped them together to hide it. "They matter to me. Isolde nodded once and left. When Mara was alone again, the room seemed suddenly larger. Her heart began to pound as the delayed fear arrived. She sank onto the edge of a chair and stared at the food without appetite. What have I done? She thought. Then another thought followed, quiet and unyielding. What else could I do and still recognize myself? Later, when the palace bells chimed the hour that marked the deepening of night, Mara was escorted through a corridor she had never seen before. The carpets were thick enough to swallow sound. The walls held tapestries of winter forests and moonlit rivers. She walked as if she were carrying a bowl filled to the brim, careful, careful, so she wouldn't spill the last of her composure. At the door of the king's private chambers, the attendant bowed and retreated. Mara stood for a moment with her hand raised, then lowered it again. Her breath fogged faintly in the air. You can decide what you want from yourself, she reminded herself, and knocked. The door opened without anyone touching it. Inside, the room was not ornate as she had expected. It was spare, almost monastic, a wide window, a long table, a single chair near the hearth. The fire burned with that same quiet blue flame. The king stood near the window, his back to her, looking out at the garden where moths drifted like pale thoughts. He did not turn immediately. You were chosen for a reason, he said at last, his voice low and even. Not cruel. Simply certain. A human bride. A symbol. Mara's throat tightened. She could have begged. She could have pleaded for mercy, for comfort, for meaning. But those words would have made her smaller, and she was tired of being made small. A symbol can still be a person, she said. The king turned then. His eyes were dark, reflecting lamplight like a lake at midnight. His expression held no heat, no tenderness. Yet neither did it hold mockery. He looked attentive, as though she had become, for the first time, something he had not already decided. I am told you refused the court's offering, he said. Mara's pulse flickered. So it had reached him. Of course it had. Nothing in Evershade stayed private for long. Yes, she answered. You understand you embarrassed them. I did, Mara said. But I would rather embarrass them than betray the workers who keep this palace running. I used to be one of them this morning. I still am, in my bones. Silence settled between them like soft ash. Mara could hear the steady burn of the flame, the distant hush of fountains. Then, to her surprise, the king did not command her to retract her words. He did not threaten. He did not speak at all for a long moment, as if considering a question he had not expected to face. Mara found herself stepping forward, not closer in intimacy, but closer in honesty. I don't know what you intend with this marriage, she said. Maybe it began as a joke. Maybe it was meant to show your court that humans can be placed anywhere you choose. The king's face did not change, and yet the air shifted. Acknowledgement without confession. Mara's hands unclasped. She reached into the pocket of her borrowed gown and pulled out a small object, a plain strip of red thread tied in a loop. She held it up between them. My mother tied this around my wrist when I first came to the palace, she said. She told me, if they make you feel like you are nothing, touch this and remember you are someone. It's foolish, maybe. It's only thread. Her voice warmed on the last word, not with sentimentality but with simple truth. But it kept me upright in rooms where I was invisible. The king's gaze settled on the thread. Not with hunger, not with contempt. with something like curiosity, maybe even recognition, though Mara could not imagine what a king recognized in a piece of worn string. "I don't ask you to love me," Mara said.